Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, council member at large and chair of the Committee on Housing. Today is Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 at 2:05 p.m. and we are meeting in room 412 of the Johnny Wilson Building and on Zoom. I'm calling to order this public roundtable of the Committee on Housing to consider several nominations important to housing and real estate related boards and positions in the district government. Today, the committee will hear from nominees whose roles touch some of the most consequential issues facing district residents, including rental housing administration, housing finance, home ownership, real estate licensing, and the integrity and fairness of the district's housing market. These positions are not ceremonial. They require judgment, independence, responsiveness, and a clear understanding of how government decisions affect tenants, homeowners, housing providers, and residents trying to remain in the district. The committee is considering several resolutions, including PR 26-599, the Rent Administrator Lauren Pear Confirmation Resolution of 2026, the PR 26-641, the Board of Directors of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency, Carrie Robinson Confirmation Resolution of 2026, PR 26-633, the Board of Directors of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency, Edward Fisher Confirmation Resolution of 2026. PR 26-632, the Board of Directors of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency, Steve Clinton Confirmation Resolution of 2026. PR 26-592, the Real Estate Commission David Bettis Confirmation Resolution of 2026. PR 26-593, the Real Estate Commission Elizabeth Blakesley Confirmation Resolution of 2026, PR 26-594, the Real Estate Commission Carol Calamiris Confirmation Resolution of 2026, PR 26-596, the Real Estate Commission Damayera Moses Perez Confirmation Resolution of 2026, and PR 26-597, the Real Estate Commission Patrick Richardson Confirmation Resolution of 2026. For the Rent Administrator nominee, the committee is focused on how the Office of the Rent Administrator can fairly, efficiently, and transparently administer the district's rent stabilization laws. Rent stabilization is one of the district's most important housing affordability tools, and residents must be able to trust that the system is accessible, timely, and consistent. For the nominees to the Board of Directors of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency, the committee is interested in how each nominee views the agency's role in expanding affordable housing, stabilizing existing affordable housing, supporting homeownership, and responding to difficult market conditions. DCHFA is a critical partner in the district's housing ecosystem, and its board members must be prepared to provide strong oversight and strategic direction. For the nominees to the Real Estate Commission, the committee will focus on consumer protection, professional standards, fair housing, transparency, and public confidence in the real estate market. Buying, selling, or renting a home is one of the most significant transactions residents will ever make, and the commission plays an important role in making sure the professionals involved meet the standards district residents deserve. I want to note that Ms. Blakesley will not be able to attend today's roundtable for medical reasons, but has submitted written testimony. I want to thank each nominee for their willingness to serve the district. Public service through boards, commissions, and appointed office require time, preparation, and accountability to the public. Today's roundtable is an opportunity for the committee and the public to better understand each nominee's experience, priorities, and approach to responsibilities of the position. We do not have public witnesses for today's hearing, so we will move to our agency witnesses. There we go. All right. So our first panel will be Lauren Pear, Rent Administrator. Welcome. Yes, as you know, we will put our government witnesses under oath. So I ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Welcome. Excellent. Well, welcome, and you can begin your testimony.
Now is it?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman White. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and the members of the Committee on Housing. I am Lauren Pear, the Rent Administrator for the District of Columbia at the Department of Housing and Community Development, Housing Regulation Administration, Rental Accommodations Division. Thank you for considering my candidacy for a fourth-term reappointment to serve as the district's rent administrator. I'm honored by Mayor Bowser's consideration and confidence in my candidacy for reappointment, and I also thank Director Colleen Green and her senior management team for their support. Public service is ingrained in my character by the accomplishments and service of my family. My great-grandfather worked at the U.S. Postal Service for his career. My father was a senior environmental enforcement prosecutor at the U.S. Department of Justice. A great-uncle served as the district's recorder of deeds. Another great-uncle served as the first Black corporation counsel and then as a DC Court of Appeals judge. Two cousins were District of Columbia Public School principals. One served as DCPS general counsel, and two great aunts were DCPS teachers. I'm grateful for their examples and legacy core value of public service. I'm a 49-year resident of the District of Columbia, and I reside in Ward 4. I graduated from Jackson Reed High School, earned a bachelor's degree in international affairs from Tufts University, and both a master's degree in public administration and a law degree from the American University. I served as a judicial law clerk and practiced commercial real estate law. I'm a licensed attorney in good standing with the District of Columbia Bar and the Maryland State Bar. After leaving private practice, I was hired at DHCD, working first as the rental conversion and sale administrator for 11 years and then as rent administrator. As rent administrator, I managed the rental accommodations division and the housing regulation administration of DHCD. RAD administers the Rental Housing Act of 1985, which includes the rent stabilization program commonly known as rent control. The Act's stated legislative purposes are: 1, to protect low and moderate income tenants from erosion of their income from increased housing costs; 2, provide incentive for the construction of new rental units and the rehabilitation of vacant rental units; 3, continue to improve administrative mechanisms for resolving disputes between housing providers and tenants; 4, protect the existing supply of rental housing from conversion to other uses; and 5, prevent the erosion of moderately priced rental housing while providing housing providers with a reasonable rate of return on their investment. The Rental Housing Act's key parts are rental housing licensing and registration, rent adjustment procedures, rent adjustment petitions and adjudication, and eviction control. These regulatory functions encompass document repository management, informal mediation, petition adjudication, statutory and regulatory compliance, technical assistance to stakeholders, and community outreach. My charge is to carry out these mandates by providing, among other things, accurate and sound technical advice to our stakeholders and rendering fair, impartial, and neutral decisions. Before summarizing RAD's accomplishments this past term and my upcoming plans, I must acknowledge the commitment of my dedicated staff. The division consists of 9 employees, including myself, with a combined approximately 185 combined years of service with RAD. RAD staff provide vital information and support to stakeholders through their subject matter mastery of the Rental Housing Act regulations, technical knowledge, patience, professionalism, all while upholding the Rental Housing Act's objectives and purpose. To give you an idea of the caseload and assistance they provide, from fiscal year 2023 to present, RAD staff answered approximately 18,222 customer telephone calls and then greeted the number of visitors to the Housing Resource Center at about 2,000 visitors each fiscal year. The RAD staff exemplifies public service and commitment. Public and customer service. I will give you an overview of my accomplishments during my past term and my upcoming plans for RAD. The Rent Registry, which is the rent control database. For 40 years, RAD's administration of the Rental Housing Act was paper-based, which did not provide an efficient method to track properties, rent adjustments, rental units, rental housing market trends, or provide data-driven policy and legislative development. In 2015, City Council mandated the development of a rent control database called the Rent Registry to modernize operations and provide data about the district's rental housing stock. My staff and I worked on development for 8 years, first in partnership with the Office of the Tenant Advocate, and then completing the project after OTA transferred the database to DHCD. It was a work-intensive process from the solicitation phase and vendor selection through development and implementation. Because the rent control program is complex, translating statutory and regulatory requirements and workflows into a digitized business process was challenging. We worked with our sister agencies, such as the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the Department of Buildings, and the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, to establish lines of communication and information exchanges to incorporate data sets into the rent registry. The rent registry was completed and launched for public use on June 2nd, 2025. For the past year, my staff and I have worked tirelessly on implementation. I conducted stakeholder training sessions, drafted instruction materials, collaborated with the agency's communication team to publicize the new system, processes, and requirements, and worked on assisting stakeholders with their online transactions. The rent registry gathers searchable parameters about buildings, base rent services and facilities, rent adjustments, unit features, rental unit and rental unit vacancy status. I anticipate the rent registry will streamline operations, provide vital information about the district's rental housing stock and rental market, improve the convenience of submitting filings, facilitating stakeholder access to information, and aid in creating data-driven policy and legislative changes. The rent registry project creates synchronicity opportunities between sister agencies as well. For example, sometimes we discover omissions or errors and welcome the opportunity to share information and work with our sister agencies to make corrections, ensure data sets and data entries for agencies co-regulating the same space utilize accurate data. Since the launch date, I have personally answered thousands of emails, assisting users with a myriad of questions and issues. My staff handles customer calls and walk-ins, and they've answered about 1,769 telephone calls about the rent registry this fiscal year. As of May 7th, 2026, my staff and I reviewed and processed 11,317 registration filings, 456 notices of tenant elderly or disabled status, and 206 tenant petitions, in addition to reviewing and processing eviction notices and housing provider petitions. There are over 5,000 rent adjustment notices in the rent registry. In response to a growing demand for data, the rent registry portal now includes raw data sets for public viewing and downloading, including housing accommodation registrations, rental units, and the registrations. The data sets will be updated monthly. My anticipated goals are: 1, contacting unregistered housing providers to inform them of their obligation to register their accommodations on the rent registry. 2, providing support and outreach to users using the online system. 3, beginning discussions with housing providers and property managers about features, improvements needed for a version 2.0. And 4, compiling needed statutory and regulatory changes to reflect our changes in procedure and process. I'm excited about how the rent registry will fundamentally change the administration of the Rental Housing Act, improve administratability, and provide insights into the efficacy of rent control and what the program means for the district. Legislatively, the last 3 years were busy for us. With the assistance of RAD's attorney advisors, I reviewed and provided comments on 88 legislative amendments, which were either substantively amended or indirectly impacted administration of the Rental Housing Act. The Rental Housing Commission diligently kept us informed of regulatory updates and invited RAD to comment on 3 sets of Rental Housing Act regulation and amendments. As always, RAD endeavors to ensure consistency, clarity, impartiality, and the administrability of the law. A recent and significant change in RAD's operations was implementing Director Green's vision for an improved housing resource center as a one-stop shop for housing information and public interface. RAD personnel staff the resource center and assist clients with housing and rent resource information, answer questions, and provide support to inquisitive and sometimes fragile and vulnerable citizens as they navigate the housing market. DHCD's community-based organizations are on site and provide support and guidance to assist clients with complex needs. I also worked on strengthening relationships and communications with sister agencies and the DC Superior Court. I'm pleased to report that DOB, DLCP, and OCTO provide vital assistance in resolving rent registry problems and keep RAD informed of their own modernization plans to diminish chances for negative impacts on the rent registry. I also met with magistrates from the landlord-tenant branch of the DC Superior Court and gave rent registry overviews and answered questions about RAD's change in process and procedures. During my past term, we engaged in outreach sessions, including a Department of Aging and Community Living roundtable session on rental housing and DHCD's Saturday College event, 3 DHCD sessions on rental accommodation registration and tenant information on what to know before you rent, a rent control presentation to the ANC 4B Housing Justice Committee, a presentation to DC Housing Authority's Landlord Advisory Council, a rent registry overview presentation to the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors, and an overview of rent adjustments for the Small Multifamily Owners Association. Developing and implementing the rent registry these past 3 years absorbed much of RAD's attention, capacity, and resources, so I was unable to engage in additional projects and improvements. 3 areas I intend to improve are increasing our outreach and stakeholder training, drafting needed statutory and regulatory updates, updating our forms, housing provider petition forms and eviction notices, and enhancing compliance and enforcement by working with DHCD's Office of General Counsel. I began my testimony by thanking Mayor Bowser for her consideration and Director Green and her senior staff for supporting my efforts and my reappointment. I remain eternally grateful to my village, who provide me with good counsel and encouragement, including my spouse, who's a recently retired district public servant with 43 years of service, my parents, family members, and friends. I always appreciate the advice and support of Chief Tenant Advocate Johanna Shreve and her staff. Thanks are also due to you, Chairperson White, the committee members, and the City Council for their efforts to continuously improve the district's rent control system, which makes the district a nationwide leader in rental housing regulation. And finally, I extend my deepest gratitude and appreciation to my RAD team for their work ethic, diligence, and commitment to public service and our stakeholders. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. I don't have a ton of questions for you because you've been at this a while, and we meet and talk and have
Yeah.
hearings. So, but appreciate the work that you and your team have done and your willingness to continue to serve in this role. I also appreciate the updates on the rent registry. About you mentioned, work with registered landlords, but also some still unregistered. Roughly like what percentage of landlords have complied? Do we know?
I have no idea. It's a universe of what we don't know, honestly, because we've never had an ability to really tally even the number of rental accommodations, much less rental units in the city. We just don't know. So I think this is our opportunity to try to create that universe. We work closely with the Department of Licensing and DLCP,
Mhm.
Consumer Protection, sorry, to get the universe of the known housing providers who have gotten their basic business licenses. But I'm sure there's also a host out there in the ether
Mm.
that are not out of compliance. So we're doing our best to create a known universe. But no, I couldn't reasonably give you an idea of what that percentage could be.
How do we, it might always be some number of people just outside of the system and what they're supposed to do, but how do we know when we are about complete, when we have virtually all landlords?
I don't know. I haven't given that the thought. I'm just trying to get it up and moving on this first year, and then hopefully expand that concept.
What are you hearing from landlords who are aware of the requirements but haven't registered yet?
I haven't really heard from them directly. The ones that I do tend to hear from that seem a little frustrated with the new system, maybe are folks that are the smaller landlords or the smaller housing providers, excuse me, who may not have have a complete grasp on the system and how it works, or they're so used to doing paper-based filings, that switching to this online process has been a little challenging for them. But in terms of the ones that have just been evading compliance or don't know about compliance, I haven't gotten much feedback or any feedbacks.
You've been reviewing some proposed changes to the rent registry data integrity bill with my team, and the council not too long ago reauthorized the emergency and temporary versions. When will we get the permanent legislation?
Oh, well, when I'm hopefully sooner than later, it is definitely on my to-do list. Honestly, it's been difficult prioritizing. I'm trying to make sure that our customers or our clients are able to navigate the system, get their transactions completed. And so it's been juggling in terms of priority. It's the legislation remains on my to-do list, and I look at it every day and try to get to it. So hopefully soon. We're going to be hopefully hiring someone soon that will also be able to share some of the workload with us. So it'll free my attention to do other important work as well.
When does the current temporary expire? Okay, and this, okay, as in 2027. Okay. Um, okay. I am getting frustration from other council members about the successive temporary and emergency. So we need to make sure we don't reach the end of that period. I know you have a lot on your plate.
Noted.
Um,
I'm sure our legislative team will keep me on task with that too.
Perfect. New America is one of the leaders in eviction data collection, but has had difficulty in a comprehensive view of evictions in the district. I know that my team met with you to discuss the idea of including the number of evictions executed in a year uh, at each unit last fall. What's your perspective on the feasibility of including this in the rent registry?
Well, we don't handle evictions, right? We just are a repository for eviction notices. So in terms of eviction notices, it was thought that we would include that feature in the rent registry. And when we got ready to build that aspect of the rent registry, we figured the way that a lot of the housing providers and their agents file notices wasn't going to work with the way that it was set up. So we kept it out of the rent registry for that one round. So everything on the rent on the excuse me on the eviction notice side is still paper based. So I'm happy to explore what that in developing a more efficient system for that filing, but at this point it's still a little bit in the dark ages in terms of just paper based. I'm not
Okay.
sure if that answered your question.
Not really, because I know you had discussed this with my team last year, so I was hoping we have some more information at this point. The concern is we can't, from a policy perspective, do anything different if we don't see data indicating that, let's say, there are more evictions from, 3 and 4 bedroom units than not, or from non-rent controlled versus rent controlled, or efficiencies. And so we want to make sure we can continue to do what we need to do to see what's happening and respond to it. But that requires data from us.
It requires data, and also it will also require more resources as well, because it's going to be a separate build out to the rent registry. It's not something, I mean, I have the data that shows going up to 4, maybe 5 bedrooms, but in terms of interweaving that with the the eviction notices we get, that's not related at this time. So that would require meeting with a developer and developing that aspect of the database.
Okay. So what would be the next step on that?
The next step would be getting with your staff and outlining the criteria that specifically that you're looking for, and then meeting with our developer to see what we can do. And in terms of designing, we capture all the criteria we want, designing it, and then getting a cost estimate and also a timeline of how long it will take. Because with development, too, there's, you're probably aware, this is something that I had to learn, there's like they have they develop, they deploy, they test, I'm sorry, they develop, they test, then they deploy. So there's a whole timeline that goes along with the coding.
Um, do you have thoughts on whether this information should be in the rent registry?
Um, Honestly, I don't see one. It definitely could be, provided that there's the resources and we're able to do it. It ties in, right? Because evictions is a subchapter in the Rental Housing Act. We're already the repository for the paper notices. I think it's feasible,
Okay.
provided that it's resourced.
Well, we wouldn't do it. You couldn't do it if it's not resourced. So,
Mm.
you know, so we need to first know what we need the resources to do. And I'm eager to get there. Um, what I'm trying to get at is I would hope to have your help in figuring out what the criteria are.
Okay.
Because if we dictate the criteria to you and they don't make sense, I would want to know that. So I would see this as a partnership.
I am always happy to
Okay.
partner with the council, particularly when it comes to this type of, whether it's legislation or this type of a project.
Excellent.
Being on the same page is very helpful, right?
Yeah. Um, is there any other, based on what you're seeing now, any other authority that you need to operate the rent registry more efficiently? Not to suggest it's not efficient,
No,
but
no, I understand.
yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some areas that need to be smoothed out. It's in that I submitted, some draft legislation I was working with your team on, and I know I owe them some comments on that. We had put some additional measures in there. For example, it's been a while since I looked at it, council member, so, and my memory is not as always as on point as I would like to be. One issue I remember thinking about is, do we want registrations to expire and have housing providers come back into the rent registry ever so often to
Mm,
re-register, so we know we're still working with current information? So I know that was one point that we put in the proposed bill or the draft bill that we sent forward to you. So there are some big picture issues I think that we need to look at. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. I know I have them written down though. And then also on the regulatory side, I need to work with the Rental Housing Commission just to make things a little more fluid, because we have had a change in process that aren't reflected in the regulations. But as we sit here now, no, I think we're doing fine, but there's always room for improvement.
okay. I was surprised to learn that your team reviews every entry into the rent registry. Is there any part of that process that could be automated?
I'm sorry, I didn't
So
understand your first part.
my understanding is that your team reviews every entry into the
Yeah, so
database.
this goes back to what we just discussed a little while ago. I think sometimes there's a disconnect when council puts legislation together and then what happens on the program side. So the reason why we're reviewing every single entry registration filing that comes in is because we have to verify whether or not a property is exempt from rent control. So that requires documentation. That requires us also verifying that a housing provider actually owns the property, or they have a sublease to do so, to actually rent the property. So it's a complex program, and it's not, at least with the technology we had while we were building it, able to fully automate every aspect of it. It's not a push of a button. There's still a lot of human touches in the process. And some of that is just because of the way that the law is designed. So, I mean, if there's a way to verify that a property is entitled to a small landlord exemption, and it's, held by a trust, like, I'm sure AI can catch that, but that's not what was built several years ago when that tool wasn't available, at least not at an acceptable cost at that time to do that kind of evaluation. So yes, there is still a lot of human touching at the registration phase.
Um, the 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 folks who built the rent registry, do we still have a contract with them? Do they play any role?
Yes, absolutely. We ask them to stay on. They're doing operations and maintenance, and I meet with them every week, and they've
Okay.
been very responsive, and I feel that they've been very good partners.
Um, eh, is it worth discussing with them whether there are aspects that can be automated?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, we get into resources, we get into costs and what that looks like. But yes, they would be able to give us that evaluation.
And um, What about the usability for residents? Sort of, how would you grade it, like on a, I guess, A through F scale, how easy it is for residents to use?
Um, I think some of it depends on your comfort with computer skills, but maybe I'm subjective and not completely objective. I would give it an A minus, B plus. I mean, we've had some glitches, right? Especially in the very beginning. I think the development team has worked very hard to clear those out. For the housing provider side, if they were sophisticated users and they understood the process, I think they were able to sail through it once they got used to it. Tenants, maybe they've had a little more needed, some tenants have needed a little more handholding for their part on the rent registry, and OTA has been a great partner in helping folks. So I think it improves, but having a knowledge, having good computer skills or, decent computer skills, and also knowing the RID registration process or rent adjustment process dictates how smoothly it goes and how usable it is.
I would imagine the average resident is not familiar with the rent adjustment process. So if that's true, I'm having trouble with the A minus, but assuming that the tenant knows the RAD process. Um, if they don't know it, how easy
If the
is it?
tenant doesn't know it, then if we can't help them directly or we don't have the bandwidth to help them, right, we send them to OTA. OTA was a partner in building, in the early phases of building it. They've been very familiar with it, and I think they've been very good in reaching out and walking tenants through that process. For housing providers, if they're a mid-sized to large housing provider, I haven't heard too many issues. It's been more like, how do I do this? I tell them how to do it, they can get it done. The small housing providers have been more of a challenge, particularly ones that may have, like I said, their computer skills aren't up, or they've just taken an attitude of, this is just a side income thing for me. I don't have to, they don't understand the whole regulatory process that goes along with it. So I think it's been more challenging for the smaller housing providers.
Okay. So, well, if for the smaller house, my read is that if the average tenant needs to get help from your agency or OTA, then it's probably not that easy for them to use.
Um, I don't, I haven't gotten that kind of feedback.
Okay.
Really, the rent registry, I mean, our forms are, then it's not like they're available, but if someone is accustomed, for example, a tenant petition, the, the form is exactly, and the information that's required is the same that was on the paper form. So if someone wants to take an old form and then follow it, I just don't think it's that complicated. Maybe I'm not a fair person to ask because I work with this every day. I'm trying to be objective about it, but maybe I'll admit that I may not be. I don't know.
Okay. So, how would you get feedback? Let's say I haven't played around with it in a while. If the average tenant is having trouble using it, how would you find that out?
They usually call us or email us, and then again, they can either come into our office and my staff will work with them and help them. Um, or we'll, ask OTA if they can, if they want to take it on. OTA, I think even had training sessions for tenants before the rent registry launched. So for tenants, their engagement with the rent registry is pretty much limited to either filing a notice of their elderly or disabled status or a tenant petition. And then the other facet I imagine that they'll engage is with the public portal and, pulling up information about particular units. So it's pretty limited in terms of what the kind of transactions that tenants engage with. It's really far more complex and intensive on the housing provider side.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. The only other question I was going to ask was about like goals, but you covered that in your. Oh yeah, thank you. You covered that in your opening statement. I had forgotten that there was a leak in the rent registry we had discussed with Director Green a couple months back. Are there any updates on that?
I'm, no, I don't know, honestly. I'll have to get back to you. And the reason why I don't know is when that breach occurred, I was actually on family leave. And so I was a little removed from that. So I'm sorry, I should have thought about getting an update on that, but we can certainly circle back to you on that and give you that information.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah,
I
of
appreciate
course.
it. Uh, well, again, I want to thank you for being with us, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. All right, we will move to our second panel. There will be three total. Oh, I'm sorry. David Bettis will be on his own panel. Carrie Robinson, Ed Fisher, and Steve Clinton. Uh, these are our DCHFA board nominees. And we will begin with Carrie Robinson. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to swear you all in because you are government witnesses. So I ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Again, welcome. And Carrie Robinson, you can begin your statement.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of my reappointment to the Board of Directors of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency. I appreciate the partnership that the Council has exhibited thus far in maintaining a healthy housing ecosystem. I am also grateful to Mayor Muriel Bowser for the opportunity to serve on the board and for her longstanding commitment to housing in the district. As the district transitions into its next chapter of leadership, I remain committed to supporting DCHFA's mission and advancing the city's housing priorities in partnership with future leadership. Over the course of my term on the DCHFA board, I have worked to bring a practitioner's perspective to the agency's work, grounded in real world experiences, navigating the complexities of housing finance, development, and preservation in the district. In my professional capacity, I remain actively engaged in real estate development, where today's market conditions, driven by higher interest rates, rising construction costs, and persistent financing gaps, have made affordable housing increasingly challenging to deliver. While my commitment to this work remains steadfast, these realities highlight the need for continued dialogue to refine existing legislation and policy to ensure a healthy and sustainable housing ecosystem in the district. This experience has informed my contributions at the board level, particularly as we consider how to structure financing that is both impactful and executable in today's market. During my tenure, I have focused on ensuring that DCHFA's resources are deployed in a manner that is efficient, equitable, and aligned with the district's broader housing goals. As market conditions continue to evolve, with growing feasibility gaps, tighter underwriting standards driven by economic vacancy distress, and strained capital markets impacted by the performance of DC assets, I have supported efforts to think more creatively about housing finance and strengthening partnerships with both nonprofit and for-profit developers to continue delivering meaningful results. During this time, the agency has also advanced several important initiatives to stabilize and strengthen the district's housing market. This includes the implementation of the Portfolio Stabilization Grant, a targeted effort to support properties facing financial stress and preserve long-term affordability, the convening of a delinquency roundtable, bringing together key stakeholders to better understand emerging challenges in rent collections and develop shared best practices across market, and also DCHFA having hosted its third annual As We Rise conference, which highlighted the critical role of African American women in real estate development and reinforced the agency's commitment to equity and inclusion within the industry. Finally, the agency is particularly proud to be able to host the fourth annual Home Ownership Fair on June 13th, an event open to the public to learn about home ownership resources from lenders, realtors, DCHFA's programs, and receive credit counseling. As we look ahead, I believe DCHFA's role is more critical than ever. I am particularly interested in continuing the conversation on the following items. First is to continue closing financing gaps by supporting innovative structuring and stronger coordination across the district's housing toolkit. Many projects today require deeper layering of subsidy, and DCHFA is uniquely positioned to help make these deals viable. Second, I look forward to advancing equitable access to development opportunities. This includes ensuring that a diverse pool of developers, particularly those rooted in the district, are able to access financing, compete effectively, and participate meaningfully in the city's housing production and preservation efforts. Third, strengthening pathways to both rental stability and home ownership. In a high interest rate environment, it is essential that we continuously evaluate our programs to ensure they remain responsible and accessible to district residents. In addition to these focus areas, I remain committed to strong governance, transparency, and responsible stewardship of the agency's resources. The work of this board requires both strategic thinking and disciplined oversight, and I take that responsibility seriously. I would be honored to continue serving on the DCHFA board and contributing to the agency's mission at this critical time for housing in the district. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to any questions you have.
Thank you very much. And Ed Fisher, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman White, council members, and staff. It is truly an honor to appear before you today regarding my nomination to the Board of Directors of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency. I want to thank Mayor Bowser for this nomination and the council for your time and consideration. My name is Ed Fisher. I'm a native Washingtonian, a husband, and a father to 4 amazing children. I'm a graduate of Hampton University and the Catholic University School of Law. Just as important, I'm a product of the DC Public Schools and a lifetime resident of Ward 7. This city has shaped who I am personally and professionally, and I take seriously any opportunity to give back to it. Throughout my career, I have been fortunate to work at the intersection of government, community, and development. Today, through the Fisher Group, I advise clients navigating complex public-private partnerships with a focus on real estate, infrastructure, healthcare, and economic development. Prior to that, I served at American University, where I led community and government relations and played a key role in advancing the university's campus plan before the Zoning Commission. I also had the privilege of serving as the executive director of the St. Elizabeth's East redevelopment, where I oversaw major infrastructure work in the early phases of mixed income housing development, in addition to the construction of the Care First Arena. Early in my career, I spent more than 6 years here as a staffer at the council, working on legislation and development projects that delivered both affordable housing and home ownership opportunities. Those experiences have given me a front row view of how challenging it can be to get housing projects from concept to completion. They have also reinforced something that I believe deeply. Affordable housing is not about units. It is about stability, opportunity, and whether people can continue to call this great city home. The mission of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency is central to that goal. DCHFA plays a critical role in financing the production and preservation of affordable housing by leveraging both public and private capital. At a time when housing costs continue to rise and demand continues to outpace supply, the agency's ability to structure deals, deploy capital efficiently, and move projects forward is more important than ever. If confirmed, I would approach this role with a focus on a few key areas. First, ensuring that we continue to finance projects that deliver high-quality, affordable housing across all 8 wards, with a clear understanding of both community needs and the market realities. Second, supporting strategies that maximize the impact of limited resources, including stronger alignment between housing finance, economic development, and workforce growth. Third, maintaining strong oversight to ensure their projects are delivered efficiently and that the agency continues to operate with transparency and accountability. There are also a few policy areas that I believe will be important for the agency to navigate in the coming years. We will need to continue to think creatively about how to layer financing tools to close increasingly difficult gaps in affordable housing deals. And we must be mindful of how interest rates, rising construction costs, and regulatory requirements are affecting the feasibility of projects to adjust our approach accordingly. I also believe I can be a practical and constructive voice on the board, understand how deals are structured, where challenges arise, and how to balance the need for oversight with the need to keep projects moving forward. I have worked with government agencies, developers, community stakeholders, and financial partners, and I bring a perspective that is both collaborative and results-oriented. I would be honored to serve on this board and to contribute to the important work of the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency. If confirmed, I look forward to working with my fellow board members, the agency leadership, and this council to advance that mission. This work is personal for me. I grew up east of the river where affordable housing was not an abstract concept, but a reality for many of my neighbors, friends, and the families in that community. As our city continues to grow and change, we have a responsibility to ensure that long-term residents and are not left behind and that future generations have the same opportunity to live and thrive here. I thank you again for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And David Clinton, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm
Good
sorry,
after-
Steve Clinton.
Steve, yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman White. Thank you for your consideration of my nomination to the Board of Directors of the DC Housing Finance Agency. Thank you to Mayor Bowser and the MOTA team for my nomination, and I'm honored for the opportunity to serve. On the personal side, I'm a graduate of the College of William and Mary. I'm a chartered financial analyst, father of 4, grandfather of 3, with 2 more coming this summer. On the professional side, I have over 40 years of housing finance experience. I spent the previous 5 years, I retired in 2025, but the previous 5 years, I was the CFO of the DC Housing Finance Agency. As the CFO, I was a member of the executive team that would contribute, manage, oversee both single-family and multifamily transactions. As the CFO, I was charged with managing all of the agency's financial reporting and accounting. So I'm intimately aware of the agency's business models, its financial condition, and generally how it operates. While I was CFO, I attended all of the board meetings, so I'm aware of the issues, transactions, and expectations of the directors of this agency. Previously, I worked 25 years at Freddie Mac. I was a senior vice president there, and I did a lot of different things there. I worked in areas of real estate credit, capital markets transactions, affordable housing transactions, servicing operations, amongst other things. I did also participate in 2008 in the housing, during the housing crisis in policy conversations as an executive at Freddie Mac with the Treasury Department, HUD, the federal FHFA, et cetera. So I've had some experience in both policy and transactions. Housing has always been my interest. My dad was a career HUD person, and I want to continue to be involved in the housing. Through my roles at DC HFA and at Freddie Mac, I learned how valuable it is for people to have a home, whether they rent it or own it, that they can afford, that's safe, that gives them a sense of community. And that's what drives my interest in continuing this issue. It can and is life-changing. The housing industry is supported by complex financial transactions, and I've had experience in many of those, which I think will help me as a director. I'm familiar with DCHFA's financial instruments, tax-exempt bonds, low-income housing tax credits, and other things. As a board member, I could be able to provide valuable oversight experience. I understand my role is as board is oversight, and I will be listening and as the agency presents strategies and transactions. In that role, I commit to thoughtful analysis of the value proposition of those transactions to all the parties, the tenants, homeowners, developers, neighbors, businesses, the government, et cetera. DCHFA has a special role in managing tax-exempt bond issuance. And as a member, I'll be looking to see that the use of those tax-exempt bonds is appropriate and well-suited to the agency's goals. I'll be looking for the transactions to be sound risk management transactions so that the agency continue to be viable and contribute. I will encourage the DCHFA staff to provide housing financing transactions to all wards of the city and to be directionally consistent with the mayor's office and the DC government. The DC HFA has a long history of accomplishment. I've been a part of it. And it executes extremely complicated transactions with sophisticated parties. I'm familiar with those transactions and those parties, and that should enable me to provide quality oversight. Housing, the affordable housing issue in DC and indeed the nation is amongst one of the most important issues for this community in this country. As a member of the agency, as a member of the board, I will take my role seriously. I'll prepare thoroughly for the meetings and try to lend my experience to enable DCHFA to be the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Steve Clinton, at the end of your testimony, you're speaking my language, is, preparing for meetings, giving feedback. That's what we expect. Carrie Robinson, you've been on the board, so appreciate the work that you have done, and we know a bit more about your background than others, although I've known Ed for a number of years, so I know a bit about his background. Let me confirm a couple things. Mr. Clinton, are you a DC resident?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think you'd be this far if you weren't, but I just couldn't remember. And for Carrie Robinson and Ed Fisher, how do you, Ms. Robinson, and how will you, Mr. Fisher, if and when there are conflicts of interest from the work that you do or the people that you represent, how will you navigate that on the board? And if you would turn on your mic before you answer.
So having already been serving on the board, I've had to do that. I always use the utmost and conservative approach. Whether there is an actual conflict of interest or even perceived conflict of interest, I tend to err, on the side of caution and do what is best for both the agency's reputation and mine. So, if you're really in the industry, inevitably, right, that you will have conflict of interest. And I think it's important to have practitioners who are, active, and just having that, again, high level of proactivity and conservative approach. And even when perceived, just go ahead and recuse from certain deals.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman White. I echo the sentiment there. When I previously served on the Housing Authority Board, I had to recuse myself from certain matters to make sure that there was no conflict of interest. I would do the same thing while serving on this board, making sure that there's no improprieties, nothing that looks out of place. And so I would make sure that I would report that to the appropriate counsel and whoever I need to inform, and I would take myself out of that particular issue or deal and recuse myself.
I appreciate that. Few questions for everybody, and we were just with you, Mr. Fisher, so we'll stay with you and then work our way across. What role should DCHFA play in helping to stabilize the district's housing market during periods of high interest rates or reduced production like we're seeing now?
Sure. I think is what you've already heard is that we have to really be creative about the financing and how we stack these deals, whether it's using LIHTC, whether it's using the Housing Production Trust Fund and other mechanisms. We'll have to coordinate with DCHD. We'll have to make sure that the developers who are before us are stable, that they're sound, that they have, I would like to say, a track record of delivering high quality across the city. I think one of the things that I think you've heard from all of us is that making sure that affordable housing is in each ward and then spread across the city equitably and fairly. So those are the first things that I would say to you on that. Our job is oversight. It is making sure that the deals have low risk and ultimately provide quality housing for our residents.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Um, So I think that one of the most important things DCHFA can do is to remain an active participant in the market. And so um, typically when there's distress, lenders can step back, tax equity investors can take a step back. Other participants in the market can take a step back. And I think it's particularly important that HFA remains active and a facilitator to seeing deals through. I think that comes through coordination with other agencies, advocating for adjustments to the RFP to make deals more feasible, to make them more reasonable, innovation around product, and stringent underwriting, right, to ensure that once something has been built, it can remain, it can stabilize and move into how the housing stock and stay there. So, I think our role is multifaceted, but most importantly is to remain active and engaged.
Mr. Clinton.
I agree with my colleagues. When the market's tough, don't give up. Stay present, analyze what's happening in the market, circle where you can make a difference. The mortgage market's constantly changing. There's reasons times are slow. Really break those apart and see where you can make a difference. On the single family side, the levers tend to be down payment assistance, tweaking the rates, but there's lots of programs that can be tweaked. So continue to get creative in that area. The multifamily side, the capital stack is very complicated. See where the weakness in those capital stacks might be. See where you can make a difference. See where you can engage new parties, different parties. So don't give up. If it's a tough market, be creative and peel the onion.
I like it. I like it. That is that's one of the things I like about DCHFA, and it's one of the things that I think Director Donald and the board do well. I'm a big fan of creativity. You all are not a DC agency, so you got to be careful about creativity because you still have to keep your credit rating up. So, but I like the thoughtfulness and innovation, and I want to make sure that continues. And a large part of that is making sure you have the right people on the board who are going to push when it's time to push, support when it's time to support. How We'll start with you, Mr. Clinton. How should DCHFA balance affordable housing production with preservation at this point in time?
Preservation in the context
how-
of
Good question. Keeping affordable housing in good condition, and keeping rents low. So we have, over 90% of our housing in DC, our multifamily housing is about 50 years old or older. And it's going to deteriorate over time. Keeping it up, fixing it up costs money, but often folks can't afford for rent to go up. And so I think increasingly we have to focus on preservation. Of course, we need production as well. So how do we balance that in a time like this?
Okay, it's a tough one. I think the agency does a great job with that. It's not all about new deals. It's not about all preservation. There's a balance in there. What is the right balance? 50-50? Probably not. It's going to ebb and flow. But in my experience there, preserving a building that's become run down or unsafe is just as valuable as a new property. So I have sort of a vague answer for you, but you need to do both. And there's certainly a need to do both. What the exact ratio is, I'm not sure, but refinancings are just as valuable as new buildings.
Yeah. Ms. Robinson?
From my perspective, the preservation is acute, not just from a CapEx standpoint in terms of making sure the actual buildings are safe and livable, but in terms of preserving their ongoing viability, right? So the NOI piece of it. And I say that because if current buildings aren't performing, then we won't have people that want to be in this market to even consider new production.
Mhm.
So from my perspective, particularly now, preservation of what we have is really important because of the long-reaching effect broadly to whether or not ongoing new production would even be feasible. Again, as I mentioned in my testimony, we um, sort of held that up when we did the portfolio stabilization grant,
Mm.
really, trying to meet an acute need in the market, distress in the market, to hold up the work that we have already done and preserve the work and production that we already have, to keep our ecosystem going. So that's my perspective.
Sure. Mr. Fisher.
I think as a new member, one of the things that I'm going to do is to rely on the expertise of the leadership at the agencies as I learn more about that piece of it. But I think the agency has to be really proactive in identifying the existing affordable units and buildings and making sure that we don't get to the point that was referenced. I know of a project in Ward 7 where the property is not in the best of shape right now. And then there are high vacancy rates. And then also there are too many of our residents are struggling with paying the rent, the ones that are there. And so I think it's being proactive and really being in a partnership with these property owners to make sure that we identify early and address it as quickly as we can. But that's something I'm certainly going to be focused on as a member of this board.
Ms. Robinson, what metrics or outcomes should the board use or prioritize when evaluating DCHFA's performance?
We have, this is a timely question you asked because given challenges in the market, the most obvious one historically, right, is the number of units produced, number of deals we've moved. And in this moment, we're having to think broadly about what success and performance looks like, given that some deals can't move because of the market challenges, right? So I think it's looking at other areas of opportunity for us. It's how many properties can we get off of our watch list? Have we been able to provide programs that allow for more single-family home ownership opportunities? Sort of strategically, what are we looking to achieve in the next 10 years? Or what can we do to be ready, for challenges coming down the pike? So this, it is an interesting time for us where we're having to sort of broaden what performance looks like for the agency because we can't necessarily rest on our laurels of the past in terms of deal production.
Okay. Mr. Fisher.
I think going back to your first, the previous question is making sure that the number of units that are preserved here in the city continues to rise. I think I really do like home ownership. We really need to focus on that here in this city and all the programs that HFA has, making sure that they have the infrastructure to be sustainable, that they have the capital to disperse to residents for whether it's a down payment assistance program or something. I think home ownership is going to be very crucial for the city and the stability of our economy overall for many years to come. So I really think that making sure that the investments are made in our home ownership programs are also very important as we struggle with the financing for multi-units with the current state of the economy.
Mr. Clinton, what are your thoughts on?
So a couple of things. I agree with what Carrie said earlier. The health of the building is a very important metric. What is the NOI? Is it break even? Is it covering its debt? And then the sub issues, vacancies, economic vacancy rates are important numbers. Other metrics for the agency certainly are the use of the tax exempt bonds. Are they using them? Where are they using them? How much are they not using them and why? Some things you can't control because of the market. Those are all important metrics for the agency. The actual number of units produced each year is certainly a viable number. The tax exempt bond usage, so on and so forth. In a single family, I think that one's a little tougher, keeping your doors open, making sure that there are appropriate products and services available every day, more so than how much they get used, because that's a little harder market to manage. But on the multifamily side, some of the traditional metrics are appropriate.
Um, Mr. Clint, what will be the agency's biggest challenge over the next few years?
Well, I've been out of it for the last year or so, so I'm not as current on the market as Carrie, but I would think on the multifamily side, it's getting capital to complement the tax exempt bonds, because typically those deals are a combination of several layers of capital. So, what's happening with the Housing Production Trust Fund, what's happening with nonprofit sources of capital, what's the agency's tax exempt bond usage. So making sure that the capital stack can be created to then get deals. On things that are a little more out of the agency's control will certainly be challenges. Interest rates, the markets, construction costs, things like that. Those are a little less in their control, but the first set of things I think are in their control. And on the single family side, again, tough market, but their challenges when there's high rate and low supply is just have as much creative programs open and available as you can.
Yeah.
And just, keep yourself marketed, make sure people know what you're offering. And then when there are circumstances where a house can be bought, that you have products to offer them.
I appreciate that. It's accountability is important, even for agencies or entities that are doing well. And, I always want to make sure we don't, for the next several years, say, well, it's a tough market. So, we got what we got. We've got to hold each other accountable. That's the only way we succeed. Mr. Fisher, you spoke about your background and experience in your opening. How does that lend itself to you being a productive member of the board here?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I've worked on projects like this from a legislative side and from the executive side, especially when I managed over at St. Elizabeth's, and we brought 252 units of affordable housing online. And so I was at the table with the developers, negotiating the deal. I think that it gives me perspective on what certain communities need, what makes sense there, making sure that a lot of our new development is transit oriented. So hopefully we can move a lot of projects near our metro stations. But also from a planning perspective, I think I have some unique insight. As I mentioned, I also did this at American University, where I moved through their campus planning process. And so that allowed me an opportunity to really work on where we put buildings. And that, again, goes back to really focusing around our metro stations, I think is important. And then just working with community. That's something that I've done for many, many years in various aspects of my career. So.
Well, I want to thank you all for being with us today, for being willing to serve and continue serving, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move to our last panel, which will be both in-person and virtual. David Bettis, Carol Calamiris, Demira Moses, and Moses Perez, I'm sorry, and Patrice Richardson. Right. David Bettis, welcome. You can begin your testimony.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the committee. I'm David Bediz, and it's my pleasure to receive your consideration for my nomination to serve on the Washington, D.C. Real Estate Commission. I'm grateful to Mayor Muriel Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. I was born in North Carolina, graduated from the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics in 96 and Duke University magna cum laude in 2000. After a weekend trip to DC my senior year, I was simply smitten with this wonderful city. I decided to move here and was able to do so immediately after graduating early. My first day as a DC resident was Valentine's Day, and I feel like I've been in love with Washington ever since. Within just months of moving here, I was able to buy my first condominium in DuPont Circle. And after buying another home 2 years later, I had not only fallen head over heels for the city, but also for the world of real estate. In 2004, I transitioned from a graphic and web designer to a full-time real estate agent, and in just 2 years, I was recognized as a top performer within my brokerage and in the real estate community as a whole. In 2007, after several years volunteering on various committees in the two main realtor associations in the area, I was nominated and voted into director positions on both the boards of GCAR and DCAR. I was also an integral member of the Forms Committee and helped with the rewrites of some of the most widely used forms in our area, helping shape the way transactions are processed in a way that promotes transparency, fairness, and efficiency, such that more contracts survived to settlement and buyers and sellers felt equally comfortable with the process. In addition to my work to benefit the world of DC real estate, I'm an active volunteer and donor to organizations that have also touched my heart. I serve as a fundraising captain with the Witten Walker Clinic, an organization I've volunteered with and benefited from since 2000. I also participate in neighborhood events like the Vermont Avenue Garden Cleanup Party, Logan Circle Cleanup, and most recently in the Bloomingdale Community Day. Throughout the years, I've been an advocate for homeowners, renters, and landlords alike, maintaining constant involvement in the activities of DCAR and GCAR to help influence public policy related to housing for the best interest of the community. I'm eager to continue my efforts as a member of the Real Estate Commission so that I may leave a lasting positive impact on this community and this city that I love so much. Respectfully, I thank you, Chairperson White, for the opportunity to testify before you in this committee. I would be happy to respond to questions from you and members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carol Calamiris, welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the committee. My name is Carol Lynn Calamiris, and it is my pleasure to appear before you today, virtually, as the mayor's nominee to serve on the District of Columbia Real Estate Commission. I am deeply grateful to Mayor Muriel Bowser for this nomination and honored to have the opportunity to serve the residents of the District of Columbia. The district has a special place for me and my family. My grandfather, Jimmy Calamiris, and his three brothers established their real estate investment, development, and management company here in Washington, D.C. in the late 1950s. From that foundation, generations of our family have devoted themselves to the real estate profession. We have real estate brokers, agents, property managers, developers, architects, and attorneys throughout our family. In many ways, my path toward becoming a DC real estate attorney was shaped from birth. Growing up in Washington was both a privilege and a responsibility. My family believed strongly in contributing to the district's workforce and economy at an early age. During high school, I worked for McLaughlin National Bank on 11th and G Streets, where I learned firsthand about commerce and business operations in the heart of the city. At 17 years old, I was promoted from consumer teller to commercial teller and processed business transactions and commercial deposits. That experience instilled in me a lasting appreciation for the vitality of our local economy and the importance of professional responsibility. After attending a university in North Carolina, I returned home to pursue my legal education at Georgetown University Law Center, graduating in 1992. Shortly thereafter, my brother, Jimmy Calamiris, and I established our law practice focused on real estate matters in the District, Maryland, and Virginia. Early in my career, I appeared before the DC Real Property Assessments and Appeals Board, beginning what has now become more than 3 decades of legal practice dedicated to real estate law throughout the region. Over the past 30 years, I have lived and raised a family in Northwest DC with my husband. Professionally, over that period of time, I've handled residential and commercial settlements and worked extensively with members of the realtor and housing communities across the DMV. I've also remained actively engaged in public policy and legislative advocacy through service on the public policy committees of both the District of Columbia Association of Realtors and the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors. In those roles, I've helped draft legislation and advocate for policies affecting real estate professionals and consumers throughout the district. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate to be recognized as a leader within the real estate community and frequently asked to teach continuing education courses, advise on compliance matters, and assist in drafting real estate forms. One of the accomplishments I am particularly proud of was working alongside Councilmember Anita Bonds' office on the TOPA Single Family Home Exemption Amendment Act of 2018, which helped create a more equitable and efficient transactional process within the single-family real estate market. I'm currently collaborating with the Legislative Affairs team at the Department of Housing and Community Development on the revisions to the TOPA forms following the passage of the Rental Act. My professional mission has always been centered on maintaining professionalism, confidence, and consistency within the real estate community. If confirmed, I look forward to working collaboratively with the mayor, the council, the real estate commission, and industry stakeholders to continue advancing that mission. Protecting, sustaining, and strengthening the district's real estate market is not only vital to our economy, but also to the stability and growth of our communities. I believe it is important the commission embrace a forward-thinking vision focused on consumer confidence, professional excellence, transparency, and modernization. The commission's responsibility extends beyond simply enforcing existing standards. It also requires anticipating the evolving needs of the DC residents, emerging technologies, changing market conditions, and modern business practices. I believe it is important the commission One of my priorities would be strengthening public trust in real estate professionals by increasing public awareness of consumer protections and improving accessibility to information. I believe the commission can play an important educational role by developing outreach initiatives focused on buyer and seller rights, fair housing protections, fraud prevention, licensing verification, and property management responsibilities. Educational webinars, multilingual resources, and partnerships with community organizations could help residents better understand their rights and navigate real estate transactions with greater confidence. I also believe the commission should proactively address technological changes within the industry. Emerging issues involving artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, digital advertising compliance, remote notarization, virtual transactions, and online platforms present both opportunities and risks for consumers and professionals alike. Establishing a task force or advisory initiative focused on these issues would position the commission to lead thoughtfully and responsibly as the industry evolves. Another important priority is continuing to elevate professional standards across the industry. I support strengthening ethics-focused continuing education, encouraging mentorship opportunities for newer licensees, and promoting leadership development within the profession. Maintaining high standards protects the consumer while also reinforcing the integrity and reputation of the District of Columbia's real estate community. Community engagement is equally important. I believe the commission should maintain open communication with residents, housing advocates, industry professionals, property managers, first-time home buyers through listening sessions and stakeholder engagement opportunities. Transparency and collaboration are essential to building public trust and ensuring public decisions reflect the needs of the communities we serve. To further the commission's goal, I would support consistent enforcement of licensing laws, ethical standards, modernization of educational requirements to reflect today's market realities, collaboration with housing and consumer protection agencies, and data-driven decision-making informed by trends, complaints, and enforcement outcomes. I also believe strongly in ensuring the district residents clearly understand the resources and protections available to them. Momentum is maintained through accountability, visibility, and measurable progress. I would encourage the establishment of annual strategic priorities, regular review of regulations to ensure continued relevance, and recognition of professional excellence and ethical leadership within the industry. The goal should always be continuous improvement, not simply minimum compliance. Ultimately, an effective commission member must bring ethical judgment, integrity, industry expertise, professionalism, and a genuine commitment to public service. I would be honored to bring those qualities, along with more than 3 decades of real estate legal experience and lifelong ties to the district, to the Real Estate Commission. Thank you again, Chairperson White, and members of the committee for your time and consideration. I am honored by this nomination and welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Demira Moses Perez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Demira Moses Perez. It is my pleasure to receive your consideration for nomination to serve on the Real Estate Commission. I'm grateful to Mayor Bowser for nominating, and I'm honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. I'm originally from New York City, but I've lived in Washington, D.C. I've called it home for close to 20 years. I'm a mom to 2 amazing human beings who call and know the city and the district as their home. My real estate career is started as a real estate sales rental agent. And at that point, I helped people from many backgrounds and financial means to find a place to call home. I then found myself, like many other of my colleagues, knee deep in a housing crisis, working on foreclosed properties. From the owner's perspective to the tenant perspective, it was devastating at many levels. The crash taught me the meaning of doing business carefully and properly, and also treating everyone with integrity. My passion for houses went beyond transactions, and I developed long-lasting relationships. I got into property management and then involved with the real estate, different real estate committees to serve the public. Today, I own a business that continues to help landlords, agents, property managers, tenants, investors, and the small landlord alike, and helping them navigate through the complex world of the rental properties in DC. My background as a real estate professional, it brings a unique perspective to everything I do. I can relate with the experiences that, whether it's a parent, landlord, a tenant, small business owner, property managers, agents, developers, and investors that they go through, both good and bad. My work gives me an in-depth understanding of how policy and practice can sometimes get it wrong. I'm serving these communities where I can educate not only my peers, but real estate professionals and landlords and tenants alike, and helping them navigate through this complex world. Joining the Real Estate Commission would allow me to continue to advocate and educate and push for policies that work for all DC residents. If elected, I hope to make the 3-year commitment meaningful. It is really personal to me and it touches me in many different levels. I expect to contribute to the best of my abilities to the efforts in place to make the commission more effective and present for this community. As a practitioner, I sometimes feel that the commission exists, but it's not really accessible to the regular agent or the resident. I hope to better understand the ways that the commission engages the community and explore ways to be more present for practitioners and residents alike. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before this committee, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We're having some signal issues. I can make out most of what you're saying, but just want to flag that. And finally, Patrice Richardson, welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, Chairman White and members of the committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I am Patrice Richardson, and it is my pleasure to receive your consideration for nomination to serve on the Real Estate Commission. I am grateful to Mayor Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of our district. I bring extensive experience in compliance, operational appropriated, non-appropriated funds audit, budget management, and project management to the commission. Additionally, I am an expert in gathering and analyzing data, defining business requirements, defining business metrics, re-engineering, and other decision-making tools. I have proven abilities in compliance monitoring, technology development, budget monitoring, and justification. In addition, I have expert communication skills in human resource, equal employment rights and processes, labor management relations, equal opportunity, employment opportunity, and facility space management. My experience includes service as a former board administration for the Real Estate Appraisal Board and the Board of Architecture, Interior Design, and Landscape Architects, and Commission Administrator for the Real Estate Commission. It is my honor as a DC Washingtonian to help the district protect the safety and public welfare by regulating the licensure and practice of real estate professionals within the District of Columbia. It is also an honor to represent the District of Columbia at the real estate conferences such as Association of Real Estate Licensed Law Officials. This provides an opportunity, this ensures that we are abreast of national and international real estate laws and practices. I am currently the Vice President of the Citizen Aware Civic Association in Ward 4. As a member of the commission, I understand both sides of the licensing process, rules, regulations, as well as administrative process requirements. I would like to share a brief list of my experience to guide my contributions to the commission. I served as a delegate point of contact in the manager's absence, reviewing and approving and providing administrative guidance to non-health licensing boards and commission and ensure compliance and applicable statutes, regulations, and the former DCRA, now DCLP policies. Collaborated with regulatory and professional organizations, facilitated board and commission meetings, conducted research on compliance, FOIA requests, and licensure managed. Developed and disseminated highly technical materials, including correspondence, reports, memorandum related to board policy, rules, and regulatory updates for diverse stakeholders. Communicated key information to the public, licensee, and district, federal, national organizations regarding board and commission activities. Continue to develop the application forms and instructions for multiple license categories, improving clarity and usability for applicants. Interpret laws, regulations, and policies, providing advisory support to individuals with complex licensing, examination, and compliance issues. Deliver comprehensive administrative support to boards and commissions, including coordinating meeting, logistics, preparing agendas and materials, documenting official actions, and providing detailed meeting minutes and reports. I am elated that I have been nominated to serve another term with the Real Estate Commission. I also like to say that I am also a product of DC Public Schools. Thank you, Commissioner White and the committee members, for the opportunity to testify before the committee. I would be happy to respond to questions from you and the members of the committee at this time.
Thank you all very much. We will jump into questions. Let me start with David Badiz. Apologies for mispronouncing your name earlier. And I appreciate your testimony. It's beautiful. I love the city too. What are the biggest risks for the district's real estate market and industry right now?
There are a lot. We face challenges every day. I've been an agent since 2004, so 22 years now. And I would say that this is the most challenging market of my career. The challenges that we face as agents are also the challenges faced by sellers and buyers alike. Specifically, interest rates being as high as they are now when they were on the decline for 20 years has made it very challenging for buyers to be able to qualify, for sellers to be able to sell, and also importantly for landlords to be able to make a profit on a purchase because the numbers just don't shake out.
Mhm.
So it definitely can put a hamstring on an otherwise healthy market. And so we have to find ways to continue to bring value to the transaction and to help buyers and sellers make wise decisions that can protect themselves financially. That's the largest challenge I see right now.
Thank you. Ms. Calamiris, any thoughts on that? Biggest challenges right now for DC's real estate market and industry?
Yes, affordability and just the inventory. We have an affordability problem that is compounded by not just the economy here in the district, but the economy as a nation. And then we have an inventory problem. We don't have enough affordable housing to really house our population. One of the biggest or the greatest thrills of my life is when I have a first-time home buyer, which I had this morning, who went from a renter to an owner in the District of Columbia, and who is just excited to be a homeowner. That's a great thrill, and it's the beginning of her being able to afford things in the future to compound that. I think we need more inventory and we need affordable pricing.
Yeah. Ms. Moses Perez, any thoughts on that? Biggest challenges right now?
Sure. Besides affordability, I think right now the real estate industry is facing a lot of uncertainty. From my perspective, when I'm dealing with the landlord community, the landlord-tenant relationships, there are a lot of challenges. You have a lot of owners that do not have access to basic information. They're confused. You have a lot of practitioners that are not well versed in the transition from an owner to a landlord. And I think that just education could go a long way, and just having a depository of information that is valid and that can transcend across DC agencies, because a lot of, whether it's a tenant or a landlord or a real estate agent, we constantly are touching different DC agencies. And from my perspective, sometimes there's a disconnect, not only in data, but in procedures and the steps to get started. And if there was more consistency and more interaction between the agencies, between the real estate, professionals, I think that would go a long way.
I appreciate that. Ms. Richardson, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. So you're being reappointed as a consumer member of the commission, but you have a lot of relevant background, industry background. What does it mean to you to represent the consumer perspective on a body made up largely of real estate professionals?
Well, because I am the layperson on the committee, it's easier for me to tell them that this isn't understandable from a consumer perspective. And then in order to teach them, we have had different seminars or even workshops that we try to have throughout the commission. And that's when the professional side meets the consumer side. And I can also be the middle person to explain both sides.
Do they listen to you, Ms. Richardson?
Absolutely.
um, y- Miss, let me go to Miss Moses Perez, and I'm going to ask the same question of the other industry folks. You all are very involved in the industry, which is a good thing. But there are aspects of this position that include um, disciplining misconduct, approving education, things that sometimes your peers may not like. How will you deal with that and any potential, for lack of a better term, conflict of interest, but conflict with your full-time work.
Sure. I would definitely, follow the guidance from the rest of the commission members. And if there's, a situation where I have to recluse myself, absolutely, that would be the first thing. The commission and the welfare of DC residents comes first. So I understand that what I do is I will be representing, beyond myself, beyond what I do, beyond my committee, beyond, I'm sorry, the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I would have no problems with stepping back if that was the case, if that was necessary.
Ms. Calamiris?
I wouldn't have any problem recusing myself if there's a conflict of interest, but I also don't have a problem with making sure that the people who appear before the commission are actually ones that we can help. If they're appearing, there may be a problem, we can help so that problem doesn't repeat itself, so that we have, as I said in my testimony, we have more confidence in our professionals. So I do realize with the job that I do, somebody who might appear before the commission may be somebody that I've worked with. And in that case, I would recuse myself. But I maintain high standards myself. And so having people appear before me that I could help in their profession, that would be a great joy.
Okay. And Mr. Bediz?
Yes, absolutely. I would have no problems recusing myself, not only if there was an obvious case of a conflict of interest, but even if there were even a slight hint of a perception of a conflict of interest, because my goal is to ensure that the Real Estate Commission is regarded highly as an ethical organization.
And you have mentioned you've been active in GCAR and DCAR. So things like discipline may not, be fun. You still feel confident that that you can manage those aspects of the role.
I can tell you from having to deal with some agents over the past 22 years that I couldn't understand their behavior. I would probably have no problem administering a little bit of discipline every now and then.
Appreciate it. Um, and let me stay with you, Mr. Bediz. What are your thoughts on how the commission can or should help ensure that property managers understand their obligations under DC law?
Well, I think it's imperative. I respect Demara, Ms. Moses Perez's uh, enthusiasm for ensuring that the Real Estate Commission has a little bit more of an accessibility to it and a greater presence in the community, not just for community members, but specifically for realtors and property managers, so that they know that they can come to us not just when there's somebody to complain about or something, or they're being complained about, but also for guidance and a way for them to improve their own business practices through our assistance.
Um, Ms. Moses Perez, how would you balance your understanding of the challenges that landlords face with the commission's responsibility to protect tenants and the public?
That would be very easy, because I deal with, I I deal with tenants, I deal with landlords, I deal with agents, property managers. A lot of what I do, sometimes I find myself educating people because quite frankly, people don't mean to do things. They don't mean to do things wrong. They don't mean to like break rules. Sometimes they just don't know. And education goes a long way in having resources. I can't tell you how many people I've learned and heard from that says, I've been doing this for many years and I never knew. That's something that I hear on a daily basis. I never knew. So if, you know, it's a balance because as realtors, we have to be held to higher standards. And it's the role of the commission to help us get there and to maintain that level of standards, because there has to be trust. There has to be trust among all the different stakeholders.
Yeah. Um, Ms. Calamiris, do you have thoughts on how the commission can be either more transparent or more accessible?
Yes, I believe that. So I'm a huge proponent of learning every day. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't have something new come up that I need to figure out and navigate. I I do settlements in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, as do a lot of our realtor communities are all in those jurisdictions. So understanding the differences between Maryland, Virginia, and DC law is vital. I think making sure when people are operating in the district that they have the resources, that they have the education, and that they have the ethical component. So I believe this commission, I'm not sure what they've done in the past because I'm newly nominated, but I've already been teaching in the community for 30 years, and I would like to bring some of that seminar, whether it's a webinar, whatever the case may be, I like to bring that to the commission so that we can then spread the word, spread the education, spread the understanding.
Ms. Richardson, what are your thoughts on how the commission can use data, complaint trends, and enforcement outcomes to improve oversight of real estate licensees?
So I have a slightly different perspective. Because we have the agents under the agency, I believe that the agency should take the lead in enforcing that their agents understand what it is they need to understand in the real estate. And if they're deficient, I think that the agency should also be able to help the agent become up to date on what's happening in the industry. I follow how the licensing process works, and no agent can be licensed unless you're a property manager, because property managers at this time are not under an agency that needs to be licensed. So I think that the data would very easily be pulled together and put in a newsletter that we usually have quarterly. However, a lot of the data would be a lot easier depending upon the database that we're using to make sure that we're accurate in the information. And when we see things that come across multiple times in the same process, that is definitely a red flag that we need to make sure everybody is educated on, from the agency down to the actual agent, broker, and the licensee.
I appreciate that. And let me I'm gonna go across everybody. Um, and I think it'll be my last question to you all. But starting with you, Ms. Richardson, if reappointed, what would be your top priority for the commission during your next term?
Oh, well, it may be kind of controversial, but I would like to see a database back into the licensing portal as opposed to the current Excel electronic paper format that they're using now for licensing.
Thank you. Ms. Moses Perez.
This would be my first time joining, so anything I can do to help with education and outreach, I would be all for it. However I can help, however I can bring my unique level of perspective and experience, I'm all for it to help as much as I can.
Thank you. Ms. Calamiris.
I would love to see, I'm not sure if they're already doing this, but I would love to see some sort of quarterly listening session. I think one of the ways to go forward is to understand what's out there and what people are dealing with. And even though we're in the field, we don't see everything. So it would be nice to have some sort of standard quarterly listening session where we can hear from the residents of the district of how they're viewing the real estate market in terms of buyers, sellers, renters, anything we can do to help their educational process. And like I said, listening to them and where their complaints lie.
And Mr. Badiz.
One of the little things that I'd like to work on, in addition to everything else my colleagues have mentioned, which I think are all great ideas, I can see some spots where the forms that we use could be improved. They haven't really been touched too much over many years, and there's even a typo or two here and there, which I'd like to get rid of because that bothers my OCD a little bit. And just by improving the efficiency of some of the forms and the way that they're structured, I hope will also improve understanding of the process for all the people involved.
I appreciate that, and I am with you in updating those forms. I want to thank you all for your willingness to serve in this capacity, for being with us today, and I look forward to working with you as the process finishes out. So those are all the questions that I have for you. Thank you again. For anyone who was unable to testify today, written testimony is encouraged and will be made part of the official record. The record for this hearing will remain open until the close of business 2 weeks from today, on Thursday, June 4th. Anyone who is interested may submit written testimony through the dedicated webpage for this hearing on the council's online hearing management system. If you don't know where to find that, you can contact the Committee on Housing at housing@dccouncil.gov or call 202-727-8270. If anyone listening is interested in learning more about the work of this committee or my office, please sign up to hear from us at robertwhiteatlarge.com. That concludes the committee's business for today. The time is 3:51, and this hearing is adjourned.